It's 9:33, so I'm going to stick to my word and we're going to get started. Now, we're going to film today because there are a few people that haven't been able to jump on and see it. So in terms of filming, if you talk, obviously you will come up on the main screen. So if you don't want your video on, you can turn your video off. Obviously, we love to see faces because it makes this a bit more interactive, but it's completely up to you whether you have your video on or off. First of all, let's do some introductions. My name's Greg Heinrich and I'm one of the directors of Inspire Sports Group. And we've got Guy Keane here, which some of you may have seen out and about in lots of our programs. We have been, in a nutshell, with Inspire, we've been around since 2011 and we specialise in everything netball development and then also cross over into other codes when it comes to topics like leadership development and athlete development as well. Such an interesting time for us now because a lot of our days and weeks are out and about working in the community with coaches like yourselves. So it's a little bit strange to not be able to do any practical sessions, but at the same time, explore the world of technology and give ourselves an opportunity to still stay connected and engaged with our netball community. So we thank you for, I guess, being interested in this type of session, but also logging on and participating as well. Just, did you want to talk about where this session came from?
Yeah, so I guess obviously within this environment, we, as you know, coaches and a netball program lack the ability to kind of connect with our athletes face to face. And we had a few clubs and coaches make contact with us just around what they would like to maybe see us do over this period. And this was maybe a suggestion that came from it. I've been probably fortunate enough to be been thrown into the deep end to run these sessions within our VNL club that I coach at. So I coach with Hawks Netball, which participate in the Victorian Netball League. And so we're kind of still in a bit of a holding pattern like many of you as coaches. But we've been running 2 weeks. So it's been something that's been an ongoing development for myself to be able to run and facilitate those sessions. So yeah, that's kind of where this session has kind of come from, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think what we've noticed as well is having a conversation the other night during another workshop and saying that a lot of the elite clubs, that they have people who are tech savvy, and this is probably okay and the norm for them to be able to run sessions straight away, and they've been running them for 5 or 6 weeks. But at local community clubs, unless you you know, have a technology background and a club that's really supportive of running online sessions, chances are you may not have even thought about running something like this. So what we thought is that it's accessible to everybody, and why not try and put that out there and show you how to actually run them. So you'll see though in your sessions that everyone gets better. So the first one might be a little bit iffy and a little bit jumpy and bumpy, but every Zoom from then on, you'll get used to A, seeing yourself on a screen, talking to somebody, and B, your younger athletes staring back at you on a screen and then still doing their exercises. Because our first Zoom workshop that we did was completely different to the Zooms that we are able to run now, purely because it was uncharted territory to be able to facilitate via online learning. So yeah, if you do your first Zoom and you're thinking, oh gosh, that was not great, it's okay, we were there too. They will get better each time that you actually run them. Now I'm going to share, we've got a PowerPoint for you, so I'm going to share that to start with, just to show you, just to go through what we're going to cover. Now if I go view, can I change that?
You can just do the slideshow.
Yeah, where was that?
Slideshow.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Does this cover everybody's screen? Can everyone see that? You're going to need to take yourself off mute and tell us, because we can't see you at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's planning and facilitating a Zoom training session. This is what we're actually going to cover today. So setting up a Zoom meeting. Now, everybody is on Zoom now. So doing the specifics of setting up meetings and the like won't be too hard to get used to. If you haven't already done one, it is quite simple. And I'm going to run through that side of it, how to set up a Zoom meeting, and then also create a regular recurring meeting so you don't have to go in and create 10 individual sessions. You can just create one, and then your players and athletes and parents can log into that one Zoom link each time. Then we're going to cover planning an effective Zoom training session. So things to consider when planning your session, and then how to actually structure your session so that you can maximise, because if you have a free account with Zoom, your Zooms are limited to 40 minutes. So we do need to have some sort of structure to it so that you can maximise that short amount of time that you have for that session. If you've got a paid account for whatever reason, might be through work or you might just have a personal paid account, then great, you can have a Zoom that runs for however long you like. And then the last thing that we'll cover is facilitating an effective Zoom training session. So I'm just going to exit that now. Just going to take a little bit and I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to come back and I'm going to share a different screen. Where am I? Actually, before I do that, thumbs up if anybody has created a Zoom meeting before. Okay, cool. So there's some that have already done this, which is great. All right, so we're just going to jump into our Inspire account here. So you should be able to see this screen now. Quite simply, this is your account screen. On the left-hand side, you have your menu bar. The one that we want to look at, there's two ways that we can do it. We can either click up the top right-hand corner where there's the schedule a meeting button. And if I click on that, that will send me through to this screen, which automatically kicks me into the other way that I can access it just by clicking on the meetings tab. So from here, you can call the session whatever you like. You might just utilise your team name and training session, and then you can enter a description in here. But as soon as your parents and your athletes and players see that the topic is a training session, I think they're going to get the idea that it's a training session. And so you might not need to necessarily put in a description. Then it's really, really simple. We put in when and the time, the duration of the session. Now, again, if you've got a free account, that'll just be 40 minutes. So you won't have the opportunity to change that. And then the time zone so that people are aware what time it's going to start. I'm going to skip through all this. You can add a registration requirement. Most of the time, it's just businesses that are running paid sessions that would utilise the registration to stop people logging into that aren't or that shouldn't. It'll generate an automatic meeting ID and then a password. So now Zoom's created the fact that you do need a password to join the links or the Zoom meetings, unless you've got that direct link to click on.
You can also, rather than have the generated number password, you can also just create it to be like your club name. Yeah. So we would just, like at Hawks, we just change that password to be Hawks, so that they can then just log in or whatever the case may be.
And then you get to choose. So with the video, you can choose to have the video on for both. Now, if you choose off, you can still change that when you go into the meeting, just through the menu bar when the meeting actually starts. And then the audio, we just click both. So again, it's probably more for businesses that have different offices linking into each other. Some might just dial in via telephone, but for you, the idea is that we create some sort of engagement. So we want our athletes to be video available and also audio available too. And then the bottom are just the meeting options. So enable join meeting before host. That just enables the meeting to pop up as soon as somebody clicks on the link. You can mute participants on entry so that if you're setting up and you don't want background noise when people log in, you can mute them straight away. You can enable a waiting room. Now with this one, just be careful if you have the waiting room, because there are times where you might miss people sitting in the waiting room because you get started in the Zoom and you might miss them. Only authenticated users can join and then record the meeting automatically. So if you click on this, you can record the sessions that you've got or that you run, or you can just leave it as it is. And then you would just click save down the bottom. I'm just going to come back up to the top here, or in the middle, where it says recurring meetings. So if you're going to run a series of 4 training sessions, all you do is click on recurring meeting, and then from there, you would switch it down to weekly, repeat every week, and you click the day that you want to run it. So if you wanted to do it on a Sunday, you can either choose an end date or end after a certain amount of occurrences. So that one you might just end after 4 occurrences, so you know that it's going to create 4 sessions for you. So like I was saying at the start, that will then actually enable your players and your parents to be able to log in using the same meeting link without having to create a new one for each session. I'm just going to cancel that before we go any further. Whilst we're in this screen, so you can see these are all our meetings that we've got coming up. If you, on the left-hand side of the menu bar, if you click on recordings, you'll see that ours is currently in the process of being recorded, but this is where you would find your recordings. You can download them to or you can record onto your computer directly, or you can record onto a cloud if you've got a paid account. That way, again, you can use it for later reference if one of your players or athletes can't actually attend the Zoom session. So that's really what we wanted to go through when it comes to creating a Zoom. Is there any questions around that? Does that not make sense to everybody or anyone? Yeah, cool. All right. It is pretty straightforward. And look, I think if you get stuck as well, there's so many help videos on Zoom on how to actually create meetings and make them happen, that YouTube is a really handy one to access. They've got all the help videos there that you can jump on and check that out. So let's move on to, I'm going to come back to the PowerPoint here. And we're just going to go from current slide. Just let that. All right, so just going through the Zoom meeting. I'm going to let Guy have a chat to you guys now about the planning side of things.
Cool. So, look, I've been lucky enough to run a few of these, as I said, through our BNL club. And, you know, like Greg said, you do get better and better each time that you run them. And there's never one that's kind of the same. So I kind of just thought it would be good to give some tips that I've kind of come across as I've been delivering the sessions and organising them. So some things to think about when you're planning is just looking at when you're actually going to schedule those. So something that we've done with Hawks is we've tried to keep a bit of a routine to their normal training environment. So they do have a strength and conditioning home program that our strength and conditioning coaches provided them. But we've kept our online training sessions to when we would normally train. So Sundays at our regular training time, and then also on a Wednesday night, which is when we would be in competition. So we run a whole club session on the Sunday evening, and then our individual teams break off and run individual training, team training sessions on the Wednesday evening, and they're at different times, just obviously depending on the coach's availability and players' availability as well. So for instance, I coach the 19s team, so I have a little bit more flexibility because some of them are at work or don't have work commitments. So I run mine a little bit earlier than the open age groups. So I think it's a good way of getting them back into their netball training routine is to maybe schedule it in your normal training session, whenever that might be. but you might also have to put that out to the parents if you're coaching a junior team, just to find out what their availability might be. So it might end up having to be on a Sunday or on a Saturday, depending on what their availability might be. The session length, like Greg said, the basic Zoom account is 40 minutes. The good thing with this is if you are using this account is it does give you a 10-minute countdown. So once you've got 10 minutes left of the session, it comes up on the top of it and just reminds you how long's to go. So if you need to kind of start to wrap some things up, it's a good way of keeping track of that. Unlimited time for the Zoom account. In terms of the age group that you're coaching, I would generally say between 30 to 45 minutes is probably a good time frame to run the sessions. Any longer, you're probably getting to where they're probably going to lose engagement throughout the session, or it just becomes, you know, a long time after that 45 minutes. That doesn't mean that you might run the session for 30 minutes and then have like 20 minutes of like a bit of just a casual check-in to see how everybody are doing, or, you know, some different activities that you might do that aren't necessarily fitness or, you know, workouting kind of format.
And just to jump in there, I think we have heard, you know, coaches out there that are running Zooms, and their open is a little, they've got a little task for everybody to do before each session. So it might be you've got to take a photo with your dog and then you've got to show everybody, or you might have to create something and show everybody before the Zoom training session starts. So just another way to engage your players and athletes prior to getting stuck into a Zoom fitness session. It's another good thing that you can try.
Yeah. The other thing I would just mention with the 40-minute session is it does start once the host starts the session. So just be mindful of people coming in late, that it does eat into the time a little bit. So I would just remind everybody to be really prompt with logging in for that session. Equipment, make sure that you communicate to your teams that when you're running the session of what the equipment is that they'll need, whether it be a netball or whether it be, you know, some other type of ball within the session, a tennis ball or whatever the case may be, whether it might be like some cones just to set out a bit of a marked space or something like that.
But also with that, if you have seen some of our daily drills that we've been putting up on our social media and our website, what we've tried to do is make sure that it's real life. So if your players don't have cones, because let's be honest, not everyone's going to have cones. Some coaches don't even own a set of cones. They might be the property of the club. When you're planning the equipment, maybe think outside the square. So if you do want to run a footwork pattern and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to need some cones, maybe just put it out there that they can use. One of ours we used 4 highlighters, because most households will have some of those everyday objects that they can substitute in. So rather than wait for the Zoom to start and then have people hunting around for different things that they can use, if you can think of the types of objects that they can use and you want them to have that there as equipment, then give them the heads up, but just make sure that it's accessible for them as well.
Yeah. Or even like just because a lot of the sessions they might do like on a concrete floor in a carport or a garage or something like that, just letting them know to have some chalk so that they could maybe do a bit of a cross on the floor is always a good way of doing it as well. And then also make sure that you communicate what the kind of area that they would need within that session. So I often would send out and say, look, you'll need an area that's probably around 2 meters by 2 meters or 4 meters by 4 meters. You might need, like you might be doing some passing on a wall. So you say, oh, can you make sure that you're near a wall or something like that as well. So just make sure that you're thinking about that area that you want them to train on, and think about, you know, weather like today, you might have to move that session indoors, so indoor versus outdoor, and try to have a bit of a flat surface so it limits the chances of any injuries or anything like that. Then also think about how you would position your device that you're going to set up the Zoom session on, because they need to be able to see you demonstrating the activity or where they're going to have to set up the camera as well. So just think about those sorts of things, because it's probably something that I didn't think about in the very first session, and I was like, oh, where am I going to put this camera so that they can see everything that I'm doing?
Yeah.
So I'm going to get Greg to just share a different screen as a bit of a resource for you. So we'll just come out of the PowerPoint, and the next screen that we're going to share is just a resource that's come from Netball Victoria, and it's a train at home safety checklist. So this is just on their website that you can download through their resources page. And you don't necessarily have to get them to fill it out and send it back to you before you complete the training session, but it just gives them a bit of an idea, or the parents, particularly if you're coaching younger athletes, around making sure that the area that they're going to do the session in is safe. So Greg might just scroll down so you can see bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
So you can see they're just, and this is where you don't necessarily have to get them to fill it out and send it back, but just so that they know, you know, that they're training. So you keep scrolling down. So it's got in there around the size of the group, and whether it's a strength training session or a conditioning training session, making sure that they're going to wear the appropriate footwear, you know, appropriate space between the equipment and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, and just on what they are wearing, you know, take that as an opportunity to get everybody in their uniform, like in what they would wear to training. It's a great chance for you to take a screenshot photo of everybody together and use that on your Facebook page, use that on your social media, distribute that around your club, because it is a way of generating momentum and motivation. If one team is doing something great via Zoom, and you know, you can throw that out there, they look awesome when they're in their uniform, they're all training via Zoom, that's infectious. And we've certainly seen, as more people promote the fact that they're doing Zooms online, more and more people are doing it because they're seeing it and going, oh, we should do that. And it's a great image to have everybody in their uniforms. Certainly if you're going to take a screenshot of the Zoom meeting and post it and put it out there. Obviously with juniors though, be mindful, you've got to ask for parents' permission before you take a photo and send it out. But it is a good opportunity to do that.
And it could be a way, if your club has, or your individual team has a sponsor, having a bit of the sponsorship in the background could always be a great way to show your commitment to that sponsor, and putting that out there as well, particularly maybe for footy netball clubs that, you know, may have major sponsors.
Yep.
So again, like I said, that's just a bit of a resource that you might be able to send out to your players, just so that they can have a bit of a think about the area that they're going to work in. Yeah,
and we can send this as a document to everybody post the meeting this morning, so that you've got it. If you want to use it, you can. If you just want to use it as a reference, you can also do that at your leisure.
Cool. All right, so we'll jump back into the PowerPoint. And we're now going to look at, actually before we do that, sorry, we use the other screen, so it's okay. Does anybody have any questions around planning a session?
If you do, you can take your mute button off and you can ask it.
That's fine. No? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move into the next screen.
It's not going to go.
There you go. So looking at the session structure, so things to consider would be looking at making sure that you do have a bit of a warm up and cool down in there. And again, you might ask the players if they're going to do any rolling, like foam rolling or any other kind of activation sort of stuff, to do that pre-coming into the meeting, and then just conduct a quick little 5-minute warm-up, and it might involve some just jogging on the spot, some dynamic stretches, that sort of stuff, but just making sure that they do a warm-up. making sure that you have a bit of a consideration to what their work to rest. I've also put in their active rest ratio is, and you know, how many times are they going to complete the sets and reps. So I'll park that little dot point for when we come back. I've just got a little app that I'll show you of something that's really great at being able to do that, so you don't have to have like it on your watch or something like that. Just the components of the session is it's going to be a strength and conditioning. Is it going to include some netball specific footwork and ball handling skills, some core work, and I always like to throw in a bit of a conditioning finishing type of activity where it might be 5 minutes of kind of, you know, really hard work to finish off with. So they leave the session going, oh, I worked really hard and worked up a bit of a sweat in that session. And I've just got down the bottom like a bit of a general kind of overview of what that might look like. Always allow time for your team to log in and just maybe start a bit of a chat, or that's where you might have a bit of a check-in with the athletes as they come in and just ask, you know, what was the best part of your day today, or, you know, what did you feel really great about achieving in today throughout the day, or something like that, just so that it generates some conversation.
Yeah, or even a question of gratitude. I know one thing that we've started doing around our dinner table even is, you know, what are we grateful for today? I think the more we are promoting that, the well-being and that checking in with each of our players, even though they may not be our family members, they are really, because let's be honest, netball is a family of its own. So even if you have a great idea is to say, okay, well, what are you grateful for today? Or have you done an act of gratitude in the last week? You can do whatever you please in that particular session. I just also want to say, with just extension on what Guy was saying in terms of allowing your players and athletes to log on, also allow some time in between each of the sections that you're running, because the purpose of having a plan is to make sure that we're effective and we're efficient with our time. But if we account for every single minute for being active during that session, we're not going to get through everything that we plan. Okay, so if you've got 40 minutes and you've set out 38 minutes of physical activity, chances of you getting through 30 minutes is probably more realistic rather than the full 38. So when you're looking at the time schedule, Guy's got there 8 minutes. Chances are when he was thinking about it, it probably was 10 minutes, but he's got to allocate less, or he's got to bring it back down to make sure that there's time to go between one activity and the next.
So I might just jump out of the PowerPoint and get into, I've just created a little video for you to have a look at. So I've downloaded this interval app on my phone for a while in my own personal training kind of setting, but you'll notice I've only just learned how to record off my phone as well, so it's another bonus of this time. I just did a quick little Google of how to do it. You can see my beautiful niece and nephew in that photo, but so if you just play this, it'll show you how to set up an interval. So it's called interval timer. It does have sound, but I can just talk our way through it. So you can just name your routine. So you can see I'm just naming it Zoom training. You can see it's a simple or complex. This is just a really simple type. So you can change the warm up, and that's really just to get the set going. So how many sets are going to be in this session? So there's going to be 6 sets, and the work part of it, so the high intensity is going to go for 30, or how many seconds did I do? 40 seconds. And then you got lots of different ways that it's like a buzzer, or there's like a whistle. I did the whistle because that's a bit more netball kind of related. And then the low intensity duration would be the rest that they are going to do within that. So I think I did 20 seconds for this rest period. So then they're working for a minute, and then you add in that there. You then scroll back up, or you go to the back, and that takes you back to the home page, and you can then press save up in the top right corner. And then you can see I've got all my different sessions that are on there, but you scroll down and find your Zoom training, click on it, and then it brings it up, and you can attach music to it as well, which is a great little way of that going through, and it'll just count through the warm-up, which just gives you a bit of a chance to get ready for the session. And then the ding would go, and the little arrows that are next to where it says high interval, you can actually click on those and it will move you to the next part of it, which I think I do just so that it doesn't take 40 seconds to get through that session. And it will just continue on all the way through. And it's just a really great way of being able to keep yourself on track, and you don't have to keep looking down. So it's a free app from your iPhone. So it's a really great way of working through that.
I'm just going to play it again so that anyone who missed it will just, okay, so it's this one here. So it has the little 0:30 image, and it's called interval timer. I might just play it again as well. I mean, it's always good to see things a couple of times. So this way you can just...
Can you just pause it on that page?
Yep.
So I haven't filmed this one, but if you see the type, this one's a simple type of routine, but if you click on the complex, it allows you to actually almost plan or schedule a whole session. So I only just realised this the other day, and again, it's when you play around with things, I think you learn more. But I actually planned a whole training session, and it allowed me to have different, so when I ran my strength and conditioning part within a session, I planned that. Then it had rest time, which you could then allocate to like a minute or 2 minutes, or whatever the case may be. Then moved on to the footwork and ball handling section. So play around with the apps and see what you can create as you go through it.
And just note to self, I think if you look in the top right-hand corner, the battery life is very limited. So just make sure that your device is charged.
I was also filming this thing at like midnight, I think.
Yeah.
So my battery was quite low.
Yeah. So we might just play it through again, just so you can see how the functions work. Now, whilst you're watching, one of the things that we would encourage you to do, if it's your very first training session that you're running, err on the side of caution. So doing 1 minute of exercise and only 20 seconds rest, I think is going to wear people out very quickly. So if you're not sure how long to do things, you know, guys obviously run a few of these. So the 40-20 works for some of the older athletes. If you're going to do this with a junior group, you might go 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or you might even do 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off for the first session. Let your players and athletes get used to having to follow the timer and do exercise for that short amount of time at high intensity. And then you can always change that as you go. So week 2 might be, you might start week 1 as 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. Week 2 might be 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And week 3 and on might be 40 seconds on and 20 seconds off. But just err on the side of caution. Don't get too far ahead before you've run a couple.
Yeah. And there's some sessions that I've ran and I was like, oh, that was way too hard. So it just makes you think about, well, maybe I need to just pull that back for the next session. Or maybe, oh, that wasn't as easy. But I always try to practice mine a little bit and just see what it feels like when I'm doing it in that space, and just, oh, this will work, or that didn't really work, so maybe I won't do that in that one. Yeah. All right, so I think we can kind of move on from that one.
Yeah.
Any questions around that kind of structuring of the session and the things to kind of consider? All good? No. Yep. So the last thing we were going to have a look at is just what the role of you being a coach in that session, and it might change from session to session. I know in some sessions I've done the workout with the team, In some sessions, I've just been watching to make sure that they're doing the technique correctly and providing feedback. So if we go to the next page for this one, so facilitating a Zoom session, the role of the coach. So you could be there as the motivator and encourager, because you've got to kind of weigh up whether, and I've got the point down the bottom there, to mute or unmute players. And you can play around with that, and some players will prefer to be on mute so that you don't hear them like really breathing hard or huffing and puffing a lot throughout the session. But as the host, you can mute everybody at one time and then unmute. So I found that particularly in the big rest period, so moving from one part of the session to another part, is a really good chance to unmute everybody and say, okay, how are you feeling? And that lets the players kind of talk to each other a little bit as well within that. So a lot of the time as the coach, you might become the motivator, encourager, because the athletes or players will be actually doing the training session. Also think about the way you give your feedback, because there'll be sometimes, like in today's session, where you the players might opt to have you not be able to see them, which is okay, or maybe their technology is failing them that week and it's not allowing them to be on video, so you may not be able to see them all the time. They also might be on a phone where they in that space, they might not be able to see them the whole time. So that's okay. Just make sure you're reinforcing the key points of whatever the skill or activity that you're getting them to do, with your verbal instructions.
Yeah, and it's also another great opportunity for you to challenge yourself as a coach to see how specific your feedback can be. We've done a couple of exercises in the past. Now, if you've watched Jade, Guy, or myself coach, we love to get animated, so we utilise our hand gestures a lot. Our body language is a big part of our delivery, and this is a challenging space to be able to do that. Although people can see you on the other end of the camera, they may not be able to see you at all times. So one of the things that we've done in the past, certainly to combat our ability to be specific, is have to hold our hands behind our back and challenge our ability as coaches to be super specific and make sure that our coaching points are correct in the first instance, but then that they're specific so that our athletes and our players know what we're asking them to do. So this is a really great way for you to challenge how good you can be with your feedback and how specific you can be, so that you're not relying on the visual always. You're allowing your verbal communication to really be on point, and so that your athletes can pick it up.
I think other points is to think about how you build intensity, and that might be through your feedback, or what I kind of do a lot of when it's like the last 15 seconds or last 10 seconds is let them know. Last 10 seconds, really make sure that you finish this little set off really strongly, to build that intensity within the session. Think about how you're going to engage and include the players to interact. So particularly during that downtime when they are resting is a really good time to get them to be unmuted and come back together as a team. And just to make sure that you're keeping that engagement high is just thinking about different activities. Don't just do the same activities every single week, and that way you might challenge them to have a different ball rather than a netball that they're using, or using the rest time as active rest. And I've got a bit of a video of a recent Hawk session that we did, and in our active rest is that they were doing some juggling just to keep them mentally switched on through the rest period. So just think about different challenges or activities that will keep them engaged within the session that they're completing. So we might jump out of that. Before we share the video, does anybody have any general questions around facilitating a Zoom session, or has anybody ran them and had some questions or something like that as we go through? So I'll give you some time if you've got those questions to ask. Unmute yourself, or you could type it if you wanted to. Any questions at all?
No,
all good. So what we might do is I've got one last little video to share, and look, I might say before Greg shares it, is even you could come up with different challenges or ways of engaging. In the last session that I ran, I actually started off the session with a Zumba for Kids video and just shared a YouTube clip on the Zoom, and the players had to dance along with the Zumba activity. I think young kids would really love that, being able to dance. There was some dabbing in it and all that sort of stuff. So you might be able to share those YouTube videos. The sound does come through them, so that's a good way of doing that.
Yeah, and just on that as well, these sessions are a great way for you to change up your regular training. Often as coaches, we think we have to spend, or we don't have a lot of time with our athletes when we get to training. So we've got to spend all our time on the practical skills and our skill progression and making sure our athletes are getting better on the netball court. We know we can't play netball right now. So this is a great opportunity for you to try introducing some other activities that are going to help them develop as people and as athletes. So Guy mentioned the juggling one. If you know anything about the sports psych side of things, juggling prior to a session actually increases an individual's focus, so they can reach that performance, their peak performance zone in their mental space before they actually go into provide or go into the physical activity. The other thing that you can do is maybe challenge them to increase their skill capacity, not sport related, but if they normally brush their teeth with their right hand, get them to brush their teeth with the left hand, or if they put a belt on with their right hand, maybe get them to put it on with their other hand. Challenge them in ways that are not necessarily sport specific, but does enable them to develop.
Cool. All right. So what you will see in this session is I kind of jump between doing and doing a little bit of juggling active recovery with them, and then while they're doing the more netball specific dodge to receive a ball, I'm more coaching. And you can see a range of different things in here. One of the players doesn't have a netball, so they're using a tennis ball as the netball. They're using a basketball instead. One player had already messaged me prior to the session starting and saying, "Oh, I need to leave halfway through it." They had an appointment to go to, so they kind of leave a bit midway through the session, which is okay as well. We've got to be really flexible through this time. You should be able to hear it. Make sure the volume's turned up and they could be able to hear it. But this was just a segment of the session. So and you can see, I think all of them are in their uniform, which is great, some sort of form of our uniform. This is a part of our footwork and ball handling segment. So they were working through a time limit of doing a movement with the ball and then throwing it up to themselves and running on to catch it. And then the active rest was juggling on 1 foot, so with a netball and a tennis ball. So you can have a look at this little clip and then turn the...
Yeah, it's right up. Can you hear that on your screens?
No. Can you just pause it for a second? So I think if you go down to, let's do that. Yeah. So you can see there's a player down there with a basketball. She was just adjusting her screen. So they're on 1 foot and juggling, and you can see I'm up there showing them what that movement is. And then I'm coaching them through. And you see there's people doing them in their garages, there's people doing it in their living rooms, and that's okay. We've got to be really flexible through this time. And one of the girls just had to leave, so that was fine.
Push, and then onto the ball, and then recover out the space, and then move it again. Go, but I'm bad. Keep going, buddy. Let's go, Shield. 3, 2, 1, and juggling, left foot. Nice and strongly. Keep that movement really short and sharp. Good, DD. Well done. Nice and strong, Charlotte. Good girl. Keep working hard. We've got 10 seconds to go. Keep going, Jam. It's summer.
So using that 10-second countdown to get them to build intensity in that last 10 seconds.
And 1. Good job. Last set of juggling. Let's go. 20 seconds. Then to yourself. So you've got to stay still mentally. You know, you're fatigued physically. So mentally switched on. 3, 2, and 1. Good job. Well done, girls. 1 minute rest.
And you can see you completely forget that you're on film when you're doing it. And so then that's a good opportunity at the end of that set. I would unmute them, get them to just say how they're feeling, or that's a good opportunity for them to kind of encourage each other. Well done, girls, good job, all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, like I said, the more you run them and facilitate them, the better you get at kind of working them through.
Do you have anything else on this spreadsheet?
No, nothing else on the spreadsheet. So
okay. Just before we open up for any last questions, and please feel free to use this forum to ask questions about any aspect of your training. So I guess that's the beauty of you guys logging on. You can get access to us to ask other random questions in a minute. But I just wanted to also touch on what types of sessions you can run with your team. I don't necessarily think everyone has to go out there and start running fitness sessions. Like the purpose of this is to show you how to run a Zoom and how to run a practical physical session, but you may also use these for other types of sessions. So you might run a wellbeing session, and that wellbeing session, you know, might just be around introducing some meditation with your players. It also might be around things like, you know, the acts of gratitude and focus more on them as people. It might be a recovery or a rehabilitation session. So you might literally do an abbreviated session for 20 minutes, and it might just be stretching. So it's not necessarily just to do strength and conditioning. This is purely a path of engagement for you with your team whilst you can't play netball. Now, we don't know how long that's going to be. It's going to be like this. We know that obviously there's been some recent announcements by Scott Morrison to say that as of, or there are states that are lifting their restrictions, and he's listed a 3-step change. But if you, and I know we've got some interstate coaches on board today, which you might have easier access moving forward, but for us in Victoria, we know that Dan Andrews has been a little bit reserved. So I think if we expect to be out for longer and plan some of these sessions, it might be good to look at every 3rd or maybe every 4th session that you running something completely different. You know, it might be how to juggle. It might be a Zumba class. It might be a rest and relaxation session. I think it's a great opportunity for you to just use this platform to engage with your team on a completely different level, so that you can still maintain strong relationships. And I think as well, you will also come out much stronger with a bond with your athletes if you do invest the time with them now.
And I think the other thing which is highlighted through this, you know, craziness of what we're going through is that within the team that I'm coaching with Hawks is we have a few regional girls that travel in from, like, you know, 2 hours away, 3 hours away. So, you know, for them to come in early for a training session might not always be the best thing for them to do like a catch up or one-on-one. So maybe this is a great forum to be able to do that, or getting your units together. So get your circle defenders or your goalers together and have a bit of an analysation of the game that they've done, or something like that, where it's more face-to-face in this forum. The other thing that I was just thinking to do is, so often when we go out and work with a club or work with a coach, is they ask a question around, you know, is it okay to get players that maybe aren't picking up a skill, or, you know, like a landing technique or something like that really well, to get them to do a home program? Absolutely, yes, it's a great thing to get people to do to practice skills at home on their own. But now we've got this beautiful way of being able to maybe help them.
Yeah.
So you could actually get them to do like a landing drill that you show them at training and bring it up on Zoom in a one-on-one session and do it with them from home. And coach them through that, or whether it's from a goaling session or something like that, you could actually coach them from home. So, you know, these are just some things that have popped up in my brain as we've kind of gone through this time as well.
Yeah. In extension of the Zoom, running Zooms now, I guess, again, we've had this conversation a number of times with people over the last week in terms of how we utilise technology moving forward. And we've gone through how to run a Zoom now because we can't do anything physically with our team. But moving forward, and this is probably more applicable to open age coaches who they might have a game, run a training session, and then they've got 4 or 5 days between their next game. And you think, oh gosh, I really want to cover that off. It might be strategy or it might be analysis. You know, I think now that we've been introduced to this online platform of connecting with people, we can't always say, oh, I want everybody to come in and run do an extra training session. So you train on a Tuesday, you play on a Saturday, and Thursday you come up with this idea that you need to run by your team and you actually want to get them together. Not everybody has access to be able to say, yeah, I've got time to come down and do an extra training session at the court. This is a great way of using this platform to say, right, I've organised a 30-minute Zoom for tonight or a 15-minute Zoom. There's something I want to run through prior to Saturday's game. Can everybody jump on and go through it that way? And then you don't have to miss the opportunity of staying connected with them in between training and games. I think now we're going to start to see a lot more of this because we are moving down that space of being able to connect with people in a different way.
So a question's just come through. How do you keep girls motivated as they reach the teenage years? And look, I think that's always a challenging thing as a coach, and probably depends on where they're at within their netball journey. I think sometimes, particularly as they're becoming more into an elite program, then that self-motivation is kind of very high anyway. But if you're working with a team that's there on a community level, some players are there because they really want to get better and improve every single week. And then there's some that are there just because they want to have some fun and enjoy the netball and play with their friends. And that's whether it's in this environment on a Zoom training session or whether it's out on a normal training environment as well, is I think sometimes getting them to show a bit of leadership within it is a really great way of doing that. And that might be that you challenge them to come up with a warm-up game or an activity that they have to actually lead and present. So if they're coming into those teenage years, it's a good way of building their life skills as well as being able to plan something and then present it to their peers is a really great way of, keeping them involved and engaged within the session.
And just to jump in on that too, I think you can look at the age-old question about coachability, so a player's ability to be coached, or you can split that in two and look at the coach's ability. So like Guy's saying, if we were to break it down and look at the coach ability, we would look at the way that you engage with your athletes and learning their individual styles. And I think that's the beauty of sport too. If you've got 8 players or 9 players on your team, you have 9 different relationships that you are building, and you have 9 different understandings of those relationships as well. So if you've got 1 or 2 players that maybe needing some motivation, then you might invest more time in those 2 than you would in the whole group. But also, like I was saying, you might use it as an opportunity to give them some leadership opportunities. So give them a challenge and allow them to go away and explore that and decode what you've asked them to do, but then also present it in a way that works for them as well. Yeah, we always look at engagement. For us at Inspire, engagement is the #1 thing, whether it's working with coaches or administrators or athletes. young and mature, it's always about our ability to engage with them so that we do motivate them. And motivation is an interesting one because it's not just the physical motivation that gets people going. Sometimes it's the emotional motivation that gets people going. So it does come down to how you engage with your athletes, what your understanding of their learning styles is, and then how you tap into that on a regular basis.
And I think Greg makes a really good point, is it's about you getting to know your players and what motivates them, and just finding out how they like to learn, whether they're visual learners or what they actually wanting to be there for. And if it is that they want to get better at learning their skills, or they want to try to get their netball to the highest level, or whether they're there because they are really there for fitness and that social side of it. Knowing what motivates them is the first thing to be able to tap into knowing, okay, how do I work with this athlete? And it will have to be a bit different to working with a different athlete that wants to, play for the Diamonds.
Yeah.
So it's just knowing your athlete, or knowing the players that you're working with, and being able to cater to them.
Yeah, and I remember, like, even coming through the ranks as an athlete, I remember there was one year, or my first year playing with the Victorian under-19s team, we actually travelled to Tasmania for our national championships. And midway through the week, I was traditionally a goaler, and Guy always picks on me for this because he says goalers are the worst defenders, and I had to work on my defensive game. But there was one game where we were actually losing. There was a 19s team and then there was a 19s reserve team, and we were losing to the 19s reserve team. And admittedly, it probably was me, my defensive efforts. And my coach yelled and screamed at me at half time, and I loved it. Like, I hungered for that direct feedback. And you know what? Because it just made me go even harder, and I had a point to prove. But in the same breath, you've got other players that get motivated by soft talking or descriptive words, whereas I just wanted to get smashed. I wanted that immediate feedback, and you might have some players that are like that, but you have to be mindful that that technique won't necessarily work with everybody. Bex also sent in a little bit of a question for everybody, well, for us and for everybody. Now, Beck, if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to take your mute off, because I'd love to have this conversation with you, if you don't mind. Okay, so we've got you online, great. So you've just said, I've been running 2 training sessions a week. Firstly, how have they been going?
Yeah, they've been going really good. My team's really, I'd say 8 out of the 10 of them are really highly motivated to improve their skills, and they don't take a lot of pushing to get going. So it's been really good.
What age group do you coach, Beck?
I coach an under 13 rep team.
Yeah, good. Okay, so even at that junior age, they're engaging well with these sessions?
Yeah, they are. So we've done a lot of the stuff that you kind of talked about. They've actually collected a lot of equipment. So they have cones, skipping ropes, juggling balls, all that kind of stuff. So I've just been running the 2 sessions separate, like strength and conditioning and like agility and ball work, because I found that's less instruction or less equipment that they have to have for each session. Yeah, but I was just wondering if that's a good way to do it, or whether it's better to kind of alternate or integrate the 2 together. Yeah,
look, some weeks you might do it integrated, some weeks you might do it separate. I think what you're doing is great. From a B&L point of view, our Sunday sessions where it's the whole group, and we have between 40 and 45 athletes that join that, so it's quite a big group. So that's just purely and simply strength and conditioning within that session. And then the Wednesday night sessions that we run is a bit of an integration of both. So, but majority of more conditioning and footwork or ball handling sort of stuff. So I think what you're doing is great. And to have that buy-in from, 8 to 10 of the athletes is really great. The other thing just to be mindful of is that sometimes it's not the engagement of the players, it's the engagement of the parents that for the underage groups that you need to get them to buy into it, because they're probably the ones that are going to be getting the kids ready for those sessions at home or logging them in. So just think, particularly if you're coaching those younger athletes, you have to get the buy-in from the athletes and from the parents. But something that we've, really made a point of at Hawks is that through this time of uncertainty, it's not mandatory. It's an opt-in. Look, we've had great buy-in. We've had probably 90% attendance to these sessions, but expect that sometimes that's not going to happen because some people might just be having an off day in this stressful time, and that's okay. We would then just check in with them outside of that session. So whether you send them a message or or give them a quick phone call just to say, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? But yeah, be realistic to the fact that you probably won't have everybody 100% of all the time in that session.
Yeah, and look, to set that up as well, Beck, and everyone else out there, if they're thinking of doing these sessions when it comes to parental buy-in, the first Zoom session that you do might just be a Zoom meet and greet and just an overview of what you're intending to do in the sessions. I know we're about to explore a 6-week program with a representative group. And the very first Zoom that we did was a 15-minute Zoom around, touching base on ISO life and how difficult it is and the challenges that we've got. But then also going through, okay, well, the fact that we've developed a 6-week program, this is what each of the 6 weeks will be like. They're Sunday morning at 8 a.m. So we need the parents to buy into that as well if they are having to log on to their computers. But at the end of the day, any young athlete who is of the age of 12, 13, 14 has used a computer before. So it might just be a matter of getting the parents okay that each Sunday morning or whenever you're running your training session, they're able to jump on the computer and actually log in. And you avoid that barrier where the parents may not buy in as much. Just touching base on your question again, Beck, around do you think it's better to separate or integrate them? I think after 3 or 4 weeks, you could ask them and say, hey guys, which sessions do you actually enjoy doing? Do you enjoy doing the S&C? Do you enjoy doing the agility and the ball work? Would you like me to combine the two together? I think often we underestimate the input and the value of what our young athletes can provide. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable in that circumstance. It doesn't mean that you don't know the answers, but what it does show that you're willing to seeking feedback from your players and get their buy-in as well. Because some of them might say, we love the S&C sessions on their own. And others might say, look, yeah, I'd love to cut it down to one session and do them both together. I guess you won't know until you actually ask them, but don't be afraid to ask them. I think that's the key message.
And I just got a question from Miranda around platforms available for online home training drills. Look, we have, on our website, we've all of our videos that we've been sharing on Facebook have got some great little drills or little minute activities that you could integrate into a at-home training drill. I think we would be remiss not to mention NetFit in terms of their online training that they've been doing in conjunction with Netball Australia, and I think
they're free.
It's a great way for them to do that. To have it, even if you just watch one of their sessions, just to go, okay, that's how that kind of works.
Yeah.
More than happy for you. I've sent out the email to you via my work email, so I'm happy for you to get in touch with me individually for some ideas. I can share some, clips and that sort of stuff as well. So just sing out if you need any help with it.
Yeah, and look, I think just on the NetFit sessions as well, it's a great initiative by Netball Australia and NetFit to get together. I know they're probably our competitors in some aspects, but when we look at what we do and why we do it, it's all about the development of netball. So there's some well-being, there's some cooking, like there's lots of great sessions with lots of different people as well. There's lots of elite athletes that are joining them. So, if you haven't looked at them, you need to register for them online, but they are free. So I'd encourage, your players to jump online and at least explore what they are. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that kind of brings us towards the end of our Zoom session. I hope everybody's found it, really useful and motivated to get out there and run. If you haven't already run one, run another one, or kind of, work through a different program. I know I'm excited to run mine tomorrow night with my team again. Does anybody have any other general questions that they have before they go?
We might do, oh, hang on, we've got one from Carleen. Oh, just some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
We might just do a group photo. So everybody get together. No, I'm kidding. You can stay where you are. That's fine. Look, we wanted to say, a huge thank you for being involved. And again, hopefully you got lots out of it. If you do have questions, you can find us on Facebook, or you've got Guy's email that you can reach all of us on. But obviously we're trying to get what we do out there in the community as much as we possibly can. So if there are people within your netball community that don't know about us, you can invite them to like our Facebook page. All of our updates are on there. So when we release some of these events, when we post our daily drills, when we do a TikTok, which was interesting to say the least. But you can invite people to follow that platform, and then they'll get all of our regular stuff. So until next workshop, I think, we say have a great weekend and wish you all the best.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.